Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Please indicate if you can't at the moment. Yeah? Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I will now ask for the live stream is started.
I confirm, Mr. Chairman, the live stream has been started.
Thank you very much. Before I formally start the meeting, I confirm this meeting has been held in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003 and the Licensing Act Hearing Regulations of 2005, which allows councils to make their own arrangements for licensing subcommittees to hearing matters in connection with the premises licence. Okay, I will go to each remote attendee to confirm that they can hear and be heard. So if you could verbally confirm that you're able to hear me, and I will confirm in response that I can hear you. Where practical, please also have your video switched on so that you can be seen by the members in attendance and the public watching. So, public representations, Councillor Kevin Tillett.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you. And I can hear and see you. Applicant agent, Mr. Nick Semper.
Hello, I can hear and see you too. I'm a bit, sir. I'm a bit concerned. The applicant's not online yet. I don't know what's happened there. I've spoken to him not 20 minutes ago, but there we are.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on that. Okay. Yeah. Yes. 10 minutes.
Yeah. Mr. Semper, would you like us to adjourn for 10 minutes to give the applicant a chance to come online?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to get hold of my business partner and ask him to make the necessary inquiries, if that's okay. If we press, yeah, so that'd be all right.
We'll adjourn for 10 minutes then. So, are you happy with that? Good afternoon, everyone. We'll now ask for the live stream to be started.
I can confirm, Chairman, the live stream has now been started.
Okay. Before I formally start the meeting, I can confirm this meeting has been held in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003 and the Licensing Act Hearing Regulations of 2005, which allow councils to make their own arrangements for licensing subcommittees to hear matters in connection with premises licence. I will go to each remote attendee to confirm that they can hear and be heard. So if you could verbally confirm that you're able to hear me, I will confirm in response that I can hear you. Where practical, please also have your video switched on so that you can be seen by the members in attendance and the public watching. So, public representations, Councillor Kevin Tillett.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can hear and see you very clearly.
And I can hear and see you, Councillor Kevin Tillett. Thank you. Agent for the applicant, Mr. Nick Semper, licensing guys.
Yes, I can hear you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, and I can hear and see you also. The applicant, Mr. Paul Kenyon. You're on mute, I think, Mr. Kenyon.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear.
Excellent. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Right, and I can hear and see you, Mr. Kenyon. Thank you. Councillor Anne Reprobat is also online. She's just observing this meeting. Okay. Thank you. I would like to welcome everybody to today's meeting. The council is videoing and audio streaming this live meeting on the internet, making a recording. The recording file forms part of the public record of the meeting and will be available on the council's website. Please remember what you say and do in this meeting has a global reach, and your words and actions should be chosen carefully. There are some additional points for members and officers to be aware of. As part of the meeting etiquette, all microphones apart from mine will be placed on mute at the start and during the meeting. I will run through the agenda in the customary way. Please note the chat facility has been switched off to ensure that attendees' contributions can be offered through the spoken voice and for the public record. Please ensure all mobile devices are switched off to prevent interference with the audio and video system. If any remote attendee loses connection, the meeting will be paused to ascertain if the connection can be restored quickly. If it is not possible to recover the connection, with a reasonable amount of time. The meeting will continue as long as there's a quorum of subcommittee members remains available to hear the proceedings and be heard. If you plan to leave before the end of the meeting, please can you indicate this in advance? Are there any questions about the procedures before we continue? No? Okay. Apologies for absence. Can I?
Yes, we've had apologies from Councillor Hardwick.
Okay. Name substitutions.
Councillor Davies is substituting for Councillor Hardwick.
Thank you. Right, declarations of interest. Are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or any other interest to be declared for the items on the agenda today? Could you please do this by raising your virtual hand or your physical hand, or I'll then ask you to speak to notify the meeting which item you have an interest in. And obviously there's only one, and the nature of that interest. Anybody? No? Thank you. Okay. Number 5. Today, application for the grant of a premises licence in respect of Golden Wake Distillery, St Martin's Avenue, Hereford, HR27RQ. Purpose: to consider an application for a grant of a premises licence in respect of the Golden Wake under the Licensing Act of 2003. So I will go over to Emma Bowell, the Licensing Authority.
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendations are that the subcommittee determine the application with a view to promote the licensing objectives in the overall interest of the local community. We should give appropriate weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote those licensing objectives, representations, including any supporting information presented by all parties, the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act, and the Herefordshire Council Statement of Licensing Policy 2020 to 2025. The reasons for these recommendations are that it ensures compliance with the Licensing Act 2003. There are a number of options open to the subcommittee. One would be to grant the licence subject to conditions that are consistent with the operating schedule, grant the licence subject to modified conditions, exclude from the scope of the licence any licensable activities, to refuse to specify a person in the licence as a designated premises supervisor, or to refuse the application. The application for the grant of a premise licence has received relevant representations and is therefore brought before the subcommittee for determination. Herefordshire Council Statement of Licensing Policy 2020 to 2025 states all representation must be relevant. For example, it must be about the likely effect of the grant of the application. This is followed by paragraph 8.57 in the Section 182 guidance, which uses the same wording. The details of the application are: the applicant is Mr. Paul Kenyon. The agent was not applicable at the time of application, but subsequently the applicant has enlisted the assistance from the licensing guys. The 28-day consultation started on the 22nd of July 22, and it's restarted on the 10th of August 22. The day that it ended was the 6th of September 2022. The application at Appendix 1 requests the following: sale and supply of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises, Monday to Sunday, 10 AM until 10 PM. 2 representations have been received from the responsible authorities: West Mercia Police, Control Appendix 2, and Training Standards Appendix 3. These conditions have been agreed by the applicant and therefore their representations have been withdrawn. 13 representations have been received from members of the public that were relevant, and that's in line with the licensing objectives that the authority has accepted, and it can be Appendix 4. Since the report has been published, 1 representation has been withdrawn, as the member of the public has said they've understood better the nature of the business. 7 representations received by the licensing authority from members of the public were rejected as not being relevant. The licensing authority shared with those who have had public representations accepted by the authority as being relevant a copy of the licence conditions that the applicant has agreed to adhere to. That can be found at Appendix 5. The licensing authority have not been notified that these address the concerns of the public that made the relevant representations. The hearing was due to take place on Monday the 19th of September, but due to the state funeral, this hearing had to be postponed to today's date. Any decision made may have an impact on the local community, and this report is in relation to a premise under the Licensing Act, and as such there are minimal environmental impacts for the council. Set out in the report there is some equality duty paragraphs, and also some legal implications. There is unlikely to be any financial implications for the council as a licensing authority at this time. Sorry, computer's froze. Okay, Schedule 5 of the Licensing Act 2003 gives a right of appeal. Appeals should be made to Magistrates Court and must be made within 21 days beginning with the day on which the appellant was notified by the licensing authority of the decision appealed against. There is little risk management associated with any decision at this time, as legislation allows a right of appeal to the Magistrates Court within the 21 days. All responsible authorities and members of the public living within Herefordshire have been consulted. Appendix 1 to 5 can be found at the back of this report. And since the report's been published, 2 further supplements have been published too.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
thank you, Emma. Any questions so far from any members? Okay. I'll now proceed to the public representations and Councillor Kevin Tillett.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. Planning application for this distillery was granted at the beginning of this year. And at that time, there was just one public objection, and it was granted planning permission under delegated authority. There were no concerns from either the transport or environmental health in terms of noise or traffic because of the nature of the business as presented in the planning application. Now we have before us a very, very different prospect. And as a result, and as a consequence of knocking on every door in St Martin's Avenue and St Martin's Street, my city council colleague and I did not find a single resident who did not have concerns about this license. This is an application that, as you've heard, has produced a lot of objections. It's unfortunate that some of them have been discounted as irrelevant. That has caused quite a lot of resentment, I have to say, from local residents who feel that their voices should be heard and that it should be up to you, colleagues, to decide whether or not their points are relevant or not. But I hope that you have been able to read the public's concerns. They are wide and many, and perhaps in some ways can be best summarised with a single word repeated 3 times in the style of that well-known television programme: location, location, location. I'm aware, colleagues, that none of you are city members, but I do hope you've had a chance to really look at this site, because as well as being within the central conservation area and next to sites of historic importance, it is actually the physical location that presents so many of the residents' objections. It is smack bang in the entranceway to a public car park. That car park serves the city swimming pool. It is barely 100 metres away from the main playgrounds of the city, where the Herefordshire Council have invested a great deal of money in the latest high-tech play equipment. It's on a very narrow street which has incomplete footways and is used very heavily by pedestrians and cyclists to access the playing fields, and also as an access across the river via the Victoria Bridge. So in terms of the actual grounds on which you can refuse this application, I hope you've read my submission as well as those of the members of the public, but I'll briefly summarise them. In terms of protecting children, this is immediately adjacent to the main play area. It's extremely heavily used by families during holidays and the weekends, and it is part of the curtilage of the city's swimming pool, which is used by most of the city schools. Indeed, the 2 in my ward walk old-fashioned crocodile style through the streets across the car park into the swimming pool, and obviously is used heavily by children and families outside of school hours, during school holidays, and of course at the weekends. Is this really a suitable site for somewhere that is licensed for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. In terms of public nuisance, the houses, the terrace of St Martin's Avenue is immediately opposite it. It's barely the width of a vehicle. These are properties predominantly owned by elderly people who already suffer a good deal of disturbance, but also immediately adjacent, there is a large halfway house for people who are rehabilitating or returning to society, and also a very large multiple occupancy sheltered home. I've spoken at length with the site manager, who is very concerned about the disturbance and interference that occur to her residents, particularly late at night. And another concern in terms of public nuisance is that St Martin's Street is as I say, within the conservation area, is a Georgian street with tall, high townhouses with very little parking. Consequently, parking is a major problem for residents. The car park in which this distillery is situated, of course, charges until 8 o'clock at night, and there is a real fear from residents that patrons will be choosing to park on the street and making a bad situation even worse. In terms of public safety, clearly, the entrance and exit for vehicles in and out of the car park is literally on either side of the building. They are driving literally down the side of the building and then across the front. It's far from a safe or satisfactory situation. As I mentioned, St Martin's Avenue has an incomplete footway. Pedestrians have to walk in the single file road, as of course do cyclists. And that there is a lot of cycle and foot traffic, not just in and out of the swimming pool, but onto the playing fields and, as I say, across the Victoria Bridge. And finally, in terms of crime and disorder, there is a unfortunate, prolonged, persistent problem of antisocial behaviour in this environment. You will have read in residents' objections about the problems of the car park being used, particularly at night, but certainly all around the swimming pool, around the play area. There is a huge problem of late night drinking, of vandalism, of litter, of antisocial behaviour. I noticed the applicant has helpfully provided the police figures, which in themselves are moderately alarming, but of course, colleagues, you will know as well as I do that most residents actually tend not to report the regular antisocial behaviour, either because they fear the police won't respond or can't respond, or indeed by the time they get there, the people have moved on, the damage has been done, you pick up your dustbins, you wipe off the graffiti and you sweep away the litter. So the presence of alcohol, in terms of being able to drink in and to take away in such a sensitive area is not going to make that situation any better. And quite rightly, residents are concerned that it will exacerbate the situation. So with all those things put together and the wide range of public concern, I would suggest that a 7-day a week, 12 hours a day, licensed premises drinking in and to take away in the middle of such a sensitive area in terms of footfall, in terms of children, and in terms of the neighbourhood really isn't suitable. I would ask colleagues to reject it. And whilst I noticed that there have been a raft of agreed conditions, of course, the concern always is with conditions is who will monitor them and who will enforce them. We all know that the issue of enforcement is a major problem, whether it be at a council level or indeed with police, and that the concerns of residents are that, of course, that these cannot and will not be enforced. So I would ask you respectfully, in view of the location of this site, that it is perfectly suitable to go ahead as a micro distillery and dispensing its products via transport and via the internet, as was initially planned in the application, but to have it open to the public to be able to sit in and to take away alcohol from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. 7 days a week isn't suitable, it isn't acceptable, and I would ask you to reject it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Tillett. Any questions of Councillor Tillett?
Yes, please. Thank you, Councillor Norman here. Thank you very much for that. Very eloquent and obviously huge concerns from your residents, which I sympathise with. The problem for me seems to be that a lot of the issues you've raised are planning issues, and it does surprise me just that it's actually got planning permission. But I think I'm picking up from what you said that in fact they got planning permission for something rather different to what this is. So I quite like a bit of clarification on that, really, because if the original planning application was not for it to be what they now want it to be, which is, you know, open to all comers and, you know, drinks being served and so on, but purely as a distillery, could we get some clarity on that? I mean, whether it's from Councillor Tillett or others, I'm not quite sure, but that does seem to be quite important because quite a lot of your concerns are directly planning concerns, I would say, and following that, were there objections to that original planning application? Because I think that is relevant.
Well, if I can at least answer Councillor Norman in part. The initial planning application, there was just one resident who objected to it, and that was on the basis of whether or not, as a public facility, it was actually appropriate that it could be sold and turned into a private enterprise. You have read between my lines, which I didn't think were too close, accurately. The initial application was for a micro distillery. There was no mention of on-sale sites. There was no mention of on-site drinking. As I say, both the transport and environment reports registered that there were no concerns because of the very, very low level of certainly of traffic that would be involved, just the odd extra minivan or transit van rather, taking away produce to be sold, and that one toilet would be retained for the 3 members of staff that were envisaged. So this is very different. Whilst I'm not going to bandy around the phrase Trojan horse, it is something that certainly has been mentioned to me by a lot of residents who feel that the application that was before planning a year ago, and as I say, was granted in January of this year, is a very different beast than what is being applied for now. And they feel understandably cheated and tricked.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. In answer to this, and I think I'm correct in this, and the legal to myself, to my left, Alice will correct me if I get something wrong. Unfortunately, planning matters don't come into licensing. But we take note, shall we say, but unfortunately we cannot deal. The planning application is completely separate from the licensing, unfortunately.
The planning will have been consulted on this application, by the made representations.
Interesting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Davis?
Yes, I was very interested in the.
Hang on. Is it for Councillor Tillett?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes. I wanted to ask, what do you know about the outside space? Oh, sorry, applicant. I'm very sorry.
Yes. Hang on. Yeah. Sorry about that.
No,
sorry, Councillor Tillett. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Tillett. Please stay online. Thank you. I now go to Nick Semper, the applicant's agent, and Paul Kenyon as well. So whoever wants to speak first.
I'll go first if that's okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good afternoon, members. That's the first thing. This application refers to a small startup business called Golden Wake Distillery, which makes high quality bottles of spirits that retail for between £27 and £35 per bottle. This constitutes a price of between 2 or 3 times the price of bottles of spirits retailed at the nearest licensed premises, which is nearby in Asda. The applicant also wishes to open a tap house style room within that premises that is open to the public, where discerning customers can sample, purchase and imbibe these locally produced quality products in a convivial atmosphere. This tap house will complement their otherwise online sales presence, which is their other principal retail route to market. Now, the timing sought in the application form must cover the entire proposed operation. And therefore, the applicant has correctly stated when he made his initial application that he wishes to sell alcohol by retail over the internet, basing his pick, pack and dispatch operation. And those hours are 10 in the morning until 10 at night daily. The broad hours proposed is only to provide contingency to handle deliveries early in the morning and late into the evening at peak times of capacity, such as processing special orders at Christmas. Now, the applicant envisages opening the tap room only after 12 o'clock on the days when he chooses to operate, and will be closing that same tap house room, that tap room, at 10 o'clock that same night. Therefore, this is not a late night entertainment or late night operation per se, under any interpretation. So the issues about parking late at night, I venture to suggest, are not that relevant. Now, just to explain what's going on down there, the location for these premises is a former toilet block set in a car park at the leisure pool at St Martin's Avenue in Hereford, clearly. Now, this building was previously, up until recently, defunct, derelict, boarded up and vandalised. It was a veritable eyesore which detracted from the general amenity and attractiveness of the entire area, to the detriment of those local residents we've heard so much about, their residents' properties and the broader public impression of the city alike. Now, this application seeks to put this formerly dilapidated eyesore back into service. Now, in this application, what I would say is this: the burden is on the applicant, i.e. Mr. Kenyon and myself, to show that the proposals in the operating schedule before you, as amended by us, are capable of promoting the licensing objectives and will not undermine them. The representors, here represented by Councillor Tillett, opposing the application, on the other hand, have the burden to show that these premises, trading under the operating schedule in front of you, will undermine the licensing objectives, and further go on to demonstrate that with evidence. In our submission, any subcommittee properly advised can only refuse this application if this operating schedule is found on the evidence to be incapable of promoting the licensing objectives. Now, as you know, each application must be judged on its own facts and merits. You'll be aware that prior to today, this business has sold no alcohol to anyone. So any pre-existing problems of street drinking that are alleged down there has got absolutely nothing to do with this applicant. Significantly also, before you, there is not one shred of evidence in the representations that challenges or criticises in any way the operating schedule as amended and agreed, the premises, the applicant, or the designated premises supervisor. There is nothing whatsoever. So let me walk you through first who has, or rather I should say who has not, raised any objection. Now, the police, being the lead responsible authority and the source of expert evidence on all crime, disorder and ASB issues in the locality, did raise a representation that amended to some conditions which we were happy to agree and are actually found in our revised operating schedule anyway. So the police, on the grounds of crime and disorder, have no objection whatsoever. Environmental health, who are the lead responsible authorities for quality of life issues and pollution issues, they have raised no rep. Trading standards have come to terms with us on the internet sales elements of the operation, and children's services. We hear about the children in the park. Children's services, whose job it is to protect children from harm, raise no objection whatsoever. Public Health, who deal with substance misuse, raise no objection whatsoever. And lastly, Planning, who are a statutory consultee and a responsible authority and have been through this application with a fine-tooth comb, raise no representation whatsoever. So, not one of the responsible authorities in our city has objected to this application, no doubt because they are evidence-driven, and this is an evidence-based decision-making process. You can therefore properly assume that all the expert bodies and parties in the city have examined this application in accordance with their statutory duty and have concluded that not only does it not undermine the licensing objectives, but indeed it is capable of promoting them. Else they would be duty bound and here to argue vehemently against it. Now, we've spoken to the police ourselves and are reassured that there is no crime or ASB issue in the vicinity of these premises that raises their concerns. Furthermore, we've provided you with the crime and ASB stats for the vicinity as part of your bundle. That data is harvested from the police.uk crime mapper, which is compiled from Home Office returns. This shows that in a span of 212 days, there have been a total of 18 incidents in total. This equates to one incident every 11.8 days. That's one incident every 283 hours. Now, people talk of ASB, but there have only been 2 reported ASB reports in this location in the last 6 months span. The applicant has addressed his mind in any event at any possible crime or disorder issues prevalent in the locality anyway. Indeed, in removing the scrub and brash that has choked the previously vacant premises, he has cleared away many sacks of broken bottles and discarded hypodermic syringes and has cleaned off the excess graffiti that's adorned its walls. None of that detritus has returned since that restoration project. Furthermore, a comprehensive CCTV system has been fitted to the building, with 4 cameras covering the interior and a further 4 cameras covering the exterior. The presence of this CCTV system now gives reassurance that this public space, perceived to be problematic by some, is now surveilled to an extent permitted by and commensurate with the ICO's guidance. We are all aware of recent regrettable incidents reported in the vicinity of the River Bath and playing fields, and will no doubt be reassured that one of the main public access routes to these areas has now been enhanced by CCTV overwatch. The applicant is also aware that there's been some concern voiced about public nuisance generated from other premises through their use of amplified music, and this has prompted fears that the same would ensue from these premises should it be granted a premises licence. However, this application is clear that there is no request for any form of regular entertainment, for example, live and recorded music, contained anywhere within it. This functionality is simply not sought by the applicant. On a similar point, there may also be some local concerns that there will be unruliness and disorderly behaviour in the areas abutting the new premises. However, the application clearly shows that there will be no beer garden or any other form of consumption area outside the building. Customers simply will not be permitted to take open vessels from the premises. The applicant would also point out that the prices of his products are set so as to be, inverted commas, reassuringly expensive, and therefore his premises would clearly not attract potentially drunken, disorderly and unruly customers, because those people are more likely to find the products and pricing structures of other venues in the city far more attractive. The applicant is minded about the possibilities that some people do drink and then drive under the influence of alcohol and over the prescribed limit, and is alive to and will be ever vigilant to regarding that potential issue. However, nearly every other licensed premises in the city lacks a private car park, and therefore a substantial proportion of their customers who arrive to socialise in Hereford must necessarily arrive by motor transport. He therefore cannot fully understand why his prospective premises should be viewed any differently from any other premises that do not have a private car park, but is located adjacent to a public car park or right next door to a public car park. For example, every licensed premises in Widemarsh Street, Commercial Road, and for example, the Saracen's Head up the road, and even the Barrels itself. The applicant is aware that these premises border a conservation area. Firstly, these premises do not lie within the conservation area, and therefore any related restrictions do not apply to these premises. Secondly, this was a pre-existing structure that had fallen into calamitous disrepair and has been conserved, and previously had not been conserved, far from it. And the applicant has restored, refurbished and repurposed that otherwise derelict building. Thirdly, prior to commencing work, planning permission was sought and obtained by the applicant. The following restoration and conservation of the building has cost the applicant in excess of £40,000. Such is the nature and quality of the enterprise. Now, you're absolutely right. I mean, I can address you on planning if you wish, but I dare say Mrs. McAlpine might have something to say about that, because she will remind you that planning and building control under para 14.6.
Mr. Simper.
Yes.
Mrs. McAlpine has been very clear on that point already. So
okay. You don't want me to quote the active section about planning not being relevant in here?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That saves me a job. So, in summary, having reflected upon the provisions of the Licensing Act 2003, the Section 182 guidance issued by the Secretary of State, the Herefordshire pool of model conditions for licensing, and the conditions already agreed with the responsible authorities and the nature of public representations received during the consultation period, the applicant amended the raft of conditions offered to accompany this application to reflect national and local best practice. And you will find that revised raft at Supplementary Information Part 2. No responsible authority objected to this application, and therefore I surmise that the application must therefore promote and not undermine the licensing objectives. There is nothing more than speculation that problems might ensue in the event of a grant set against it. Now, speculation is not evidence, and this is an evidence-based decision-making process, which should be decided on its merits and facts. And I provided empirical evidence about crime and ASB in the area. So consequently, I respectfully ask you to grant this modest application in the terms within which it's been sought, that we may wish this new startup business every success going forwards. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Semper. Mr. Kenyon, would you like to say anything before I go to members?
No, I'm fine. I think Nick's said just about everything.
Okay, right. I must apologise. At the beginning of the meeting, I didn't introduce the top table and who we've got here today. So obviously, I'm Councillor Paul Andrews. I'm the chair. To my right, I have Councillor Felicity Norman and Councillor Claire Davis. Okay. Sarah Buffery is the clerk today, and Alfie Best is our main man over there on IT. To my left, I have Alice McAlpine, our legal advisor, and obviously Emma Bowell for licensing is the licensing technical officer. So I do apologise, I did not introduce those at the beginning. Anyway, members, questions?
I think most of mine has been covered by presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, actually mine as well have been covered, Chair.
Okay. So just to confirm, please, because obviously I'm looking at the plan in our pack, and I notice in the blue area there's an entrance. There's two entrances going into it, and some people might think, looking at this, that it looks like an open area. There's no open areas at all. Can you confirm that? There's nothing outside at all?
There's a porch onto the one side of the building, but that's part of the building and that's walled in.
Yeah. So there's no actual open area that any license?
No.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Chair, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, I just quick follow-up if I may. Thank you. My question is I think the application is for alcohol. which covers a range, and we've heard about your quality product. I'm wondering whether you're intending to have other wine, beer, anything of that sort. I'm not sure it would actually make any difference. I'm interested. Thank you.
Yeah, no, yeah, we'll have wine and a beer on. That's only because couples come down, maybe one wants to try a gin, and maybe someone just wants to sit and have a beer while they're sampling the different gins. Not everyone likes gin and vodka and rum.
Thank you.
So, this actually hasn't got anything to do with the licence. I just wanted to know, do you envisage people coming by a coach, like a birthday party, coming by a coach to actually taste your product?
Yeah, we're going to try and promote visits, group visits. I mean, it's not that big. It is an old public toilet, so we're only probably looking at groups of about 12 to 16, where they can come in and we'll show them around the distillery, and they can try some product and hopefully buy lots of it.
My reason for asking is for the parking, depending on whether it was a coach or a smaller vehicle. It's got nothing to do with the licensing, but that was just what I wanted to know about.
There is actually coach parking down in the car park here.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, thank you very much all. We now adjourn.
Yes.
So the subcommittee will now adjourn to discuss the application, and we will come back in 30 minutes. So that would be 25 to 4, am I correct?
Something like that.
Yeah, 25 to 4. For any remote attendees, I'd be grateful if you could please rejoin the meeting 5 minutes prior to the end of the adjournment in case there are any technical issues which need to be resolved. I will now ask for the live stream.
I can confirm, Chairman, the live stream has been restarted.
Okay, everybody's on. Welcome back to the Licence Subcommittee. I will now read the decision of the subcommittee. The subcommittee's decision is to approve the application as applied for, subject to the revised description, operating schedule and revised conditions as set out submitted by the applicant's agent. The reasons for this: the subcommittee has taken into account the written representations and information presented at the subcommittee today, fully recognise the concerns raised and the reasons why the representations were made. However, the subcommittee considered that the application as amended will promote the licensing objectives. I'd like to clarify that to the members of the public that if you have any concerns, you can actually go to the licensing department of Herefordshire Council, but it needs to be evidence-based if you have any concerns of anything in the area, and this goes with any licensed premises in Herefordshire. Thank you. So to conclude, finally, before I close the meeting, can I check the diplomatic service team, sorry,